Good to be with you. Mornings with Richard Cross. We are pleased to welcome the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, the Honorable Delbert Hosemann. Sir, can I offer you a glass of water?
I already helped myself over the water.
Want to make sure that you are good and hydrated.
I don't miss that anymore.
How are you?
We're doing good. I had, all that checked out all good, but I was warned not to get up, run 3 miles, give a speech at 7, a speech at 9, a speech at 10, run the Senate, and expect to be standing around.
Well, probably some good advice there. I mean, people saw it. It was out there. You obviously experienced a scary moment.
Absolutely, and it's just a good warning for all of us to take care of yourself and do the things that you need to do. And, when you get wrapped up in all of the legislation and, we were with the Future Farmers of America, a lot of young men and women, and earlier in the morning we had Main Street press conference meeting with 2 cities about things that they need and the state needs to help them with, and then running the session. And you sometimes just ignore your own common sense. I will tell you, it's been absolutely, and I don't want to spend too much time because we got other things to talk about.
I understand.
But it's been phenomenal, the number of emails I've gotten. But people say, you're not going to believe where I fainted from hydration. One of them was at the presidential inauguration. Another one was in his kitchen at Christmas. Another one was somewhere else. And so all these people are telling me about how it happened to them as well. So I think it's maybe a good lesson for all of us to stay hydrated. I asked the Senate to make February 19th hydration day, if we could, so we wouldn't forget it anymore. But I'm pleased that doctors all said we're all great and everything's functioning as it should. So we're in good shape right now.
Well, would the House have to approve that bill or not? Because I'm not sure it would get through.
No. I'm going to tag it to House Bill 1. Maybe that'll go through then.
There you go. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. We'll move on from this, but I was in the, I guess it was the concert choir in high school, and one of the first things they told us is, hey, in a performance, don't lock your knees.
And that's true.
You got to keep your knees bent just a little bit.
It's true today, because I was standing up there, leg locked, talking about a whole bunch of stuff, and the next thing I know, I was sitting down.
All right, so it took a little while to get to this point, but the Senate passed the tax reform bill. We know that it's very different from the House legislation. Are you pleased with ultimately how this bill turned out?
Well, I want to go back. I don't know this is that different to start with.
Less complicated. There's less there.
Without question about that. You're right about that, Richard, because ours is pretty simple, I think. We looked at this from 3 different areas, and I'll be real specific about them. The first was we have lowered the income tax from 5% to 4%, and that has been about a $500 million return of taxpayer money. I don't refer to them necessarily as a tax cut, but we're able to return that money where we don't get it anymore. Then the second thing we looked at was the grocery tax. Groceries have gotten exceptionally expensive, and our people really needed a reduction in the grocery tax. So that was a second bucket. The third one was a little bit more difficult in trying to determine why we have accelerated the cost of maintaining our roads so significantly. And Chairman Harkins yesterday presented a table that shows maybe about 5 years ago we were running along on an even, and then we just spiraled up for the cost of asphalt and everything else. And that drug us into the fact that we have to maintain our roads. That's how our kids get to school, how we get to work. It's economic generators. There's a whole type of things. And so that led us to a long discussion with MDOT, with Brad White, who does a great job. Mm-hmm. And we met with Brad several different times looking at, how much does it really cost to do this? And he's under some federal requirements that say, you've got to do so much every year and that kind of thing. And so we gradually came up to what would be the most common sense way to do that. Being just straight up with everybody is always the best way, I think. And so we said it's be 3 cents a gallon, and you can look at the pump and it cost me 3 cents, and you can look at the orange barrels and that's what I paid for. I think that was the most important thing. So we have got a list from MDOT on where this money will be spent. 3 cents a gallon over each of the 3 years, it would be 9 cents total.
Right.
And so that'll still be, I think, the lowest other than Louisiana and Texas in taxes. But regardless of that, we looked at that, and we think that will fund the maintenance of our roads. We specifically put in there it's not to go for any overhead. This is money that's going to asphalt.
This is maintenance.
You got it. Something. I don't want any engineering. I don't want any of that other stuff. This money that our taxpayers are going to pay is going to go in their tires, underneath their tires somewhere. And we have an analysis that basically is all over the state. You know, we have, I think, 30,000 miles we got to keep up. So it's pretty much all over the state. Now, that doesn't preclude the last part of this, and then I'll stop for questions, but that does not preclude the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund, which is really important to me. It's fixed our bridges since Governor Reeves was here. We're down to like 6 bridges that are the last of these things that need to be done, and that's very helpful to my counties and county roads and county supervisors.
Sure. So
we want to do that. It does not preclude capacity. Like, for example, this year we're hopeful to fund the Gluckstadt down to Madison. There's another one in Rankin, and there's one on the coast. We're rebuilding a part of Interstate 20. But there's several things that we will be funding in addition to that. So this money, this 3 cents a gallon over the next 3 years, that will be for maintenance and nothing else. So I'm very hopeful about that. And then we didn't really want to raise the sales tax. That is a consumption tax, and it's being raised on its own by the fact we've got inflation. You know, inflation is 2 or 3%, and so it's going up every year regardless, much like our real property taxes have been doing. They go up every year, even though all the Board of Supervisors and everybody else will tell you, well, we didn't raise the millage. Well, but they revalued your property, so your taxes went up.
Yeah.
And they need that money to maintain their own work that they do at the county level. So all of that put together was why we came up with cutting our taxes down to 2.99%, cutting our grocery tax from 7 to 5. Then the other last thing, and I appreciate you letting me run on this a little bit. The other last thing that thought was important, it needed to be a tax cut. When you added all this up, you need to be paying less taxes. And so we did that, and over the next 4 years, we under our proposal, we will have more money in the taxpayer's pocket than we took out.
So that's been one of the criticisms that I've seen that have come in during the show is people are looking at this and saying, oh, they're just moving money around. This is just a shell game. You're raising taxes here and you're moving taxes there. It does feel like there's an importance to look at, whether you're talking about the Senate plan or the House plan, to look at these holistically and see that there is a net cut. And yes, there may be some moving around of where taxes are implemented, but it's the overall result that matters.
That's correct. And when you look at this, we looked at seniors, we looked at people just starting and buying a house, all of those different things. And across the board, our calculations showed that you have, you owe less money to somebody, whether it be the gas tax, you save money on eating more than, I think it's about $7 people average on the gas tax and per week, and we looked at that versus food and all the others. And then, of course, the income tax was, significant for working people.
I know reasonable minds can disagree, and I think as well as most do that the House worked for a long time on the plan that they put together. I know that Josh Harkins and a lot of other senators in conjunction with you worked really hard on this bill, and a lot of time has gone into it. I just have a feeling that most Mississippians look at this and go, well, there are parts of this that I like on the Senate side, and there are parts of this that I like on the House side. Can they not put their heads together and come up with a bill that's good for Mississippi that everybody is okay with? So let's talk about that on the other side of the break.
Happy to.
We've had House Bill 1. We now have the Senate bill. Is there a chance for the Senate and the House to work together? Because at least on the outside looking in, that does not appear to be an exceptionally good relationship right now.
I don't know about that. I'll be meeting with the Speaker in about an hour, so I'll tell him you said that.
Well, no, I said outside looking in. That's the perception that exists. We'll talk about that when we come back.
All right, that'll be good.
Lieutenant Governor
Everybody
Delbert
drink
Hosemann.
your water while you're riding to work, please.
Yeah, a little Pedialyte, maybe a little Gatorade mixed in there. Just stay hydrated.
That's exactly
we are glad to have the Lieutenant Governor upright this morning on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Quick time out. We're back with you after this. Back with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. When you find yourself in the position you're in, Lieutenant Governor, President of the Senate, do you view the senators as almost like you're a head coach and they're players on your team, like you're a teacher, they're the students? And I don't mean that in like a condescending way at all.
No, but I understand exactly what you're saying.
Here's what I'm getting at. You know, if you're a coach, you coach your players hard, but you don't want another coach necessarily interfering with what you're doing. So when the governor takes a shot at one of your senators, do you feel compelled to get involved?
I do, from the standpoint of supporting that senator, particularly when he's right, as he was on the fact that we allow people to vote with an ID in the circuit clerk's office. I sat in Laura Trump's when she was here and spoke to her about the fact and her specific instructions to us is we don't want to lose the presidency again by not getting our people out to vote. Go get them to vote early. And that was President Trump's, I think, quite frankly, it helped him in his victory. And so the other thing is our law had said, well, if you're out of the county, you can vote early or over 65 or disabled, but not anything else. So I had a bunch of people lying that were voting. And I mean, I knew that when I was Secretary of State.
Sure.
So I thought Senator England was appropriate and certainly something that President Trump wanted us to do, and certainly something that I thought was valid. And I didn't want my seniors or some people that had work. Like one nurse talked to me and said, I'm so glad y'all are passing that because I have to work all day and I wouldn't be able to vote. And I can go down and vote on Sunday, and I didn't want to lie about it. So, I mean, it's just the reality of it, and it's a particularly conservative thing, I think. And, you know, we're not allowing people to vote all over the world. They got to be down there with an ID, which we got through without getting sued.
And in the circuit clerk's office.
In the circuit clerk's office, and they've been very, and secure. And the clerks have been, they've been very good about helping. So I just thought that was outside the bounds and on that particular one. And you're right about this. I don't vote in the Senate. I'm the president. I'm the referee, for example, during the session. I recognize people. I will keep it organized, that kind of thing. I do have the ability to name the committee chairman and then also to send bills to where each one of the committees. And so that's a very powerful thing for the lieutenant governor, but I don't vote. And so when I'm down there, my methodology, and I'll be having it today, quite frankly, and did yesterday, is to have groups of senators in my office, and we discuss these issues. And I have they'll tell you, I go around the room. What do you think, Senator? So, what do you think, Senator? Why would you say that? And we have these discussions, much as you would in a collegiate class on political science, probably. And from that, we generate a sense of everybody participating in the discussions and where the place is going. And we don't vote like a block. You'll see, for example, on bringing wine in on direct shipment.
Right.
We had some Democrats voting for it, some Republicans voting against it. So there's not necessarily the block voting that there may be in the House on various issues. And so we have a collegiate atmosphere, and I foster that as much as I possibly can, Richard. Those people are hired by 55,000 people, and they have the right to speak. And so I try to honor that, and we try to bring them really, much as you said, more of a coach or maybe an uncle or something, just to keep them in a fraternal type organization. I think that's important, and it's been successful for us. And that doesn't have to be everybody's management style, but that's mine.
Yeah. What about the ongoing feud between you and the state auditor?
I don't know much about that. I pay attention to the stuff I got to do. You know. I keep up with what I got to do. I don't keep up with what he does. Every time I see there's problems over there.
So the bill that made it to the floor that would have stripped the state auditor's office of power.
I had never discussed that with that senator.
Okay.
And there was one.
What about some of the attacks that the state auditor has leveled at you?
Well, that's up to him. I mean, the little guy wants attention, so he can get that if he wants to. And when you look at this. When you look at what's happened in that particular office, I do have some concerns, quite frankly. But we've got other matters, tax matters and whatnot, and he's a duly elected statewide official. But there are concerns about, writing books, spending $2 million that wasn't authorized. These cases, these slander cases, using lawyers that the state pays for your personal defense. The Attorney General has said he shouldn't have spent money on one thing, and so it seems like there's always something riled up over there. But it'll play out like it normally does.
Visiting with Delbert Hosemann, Lieutenant Governor. Speaker of the House Jason White was on with me last week, and we were talking about their plan. And I asked about the ability to get to the finish line. He knows, that the bills are different, and you're going to try and get together and get to something. And I asked him, I said, is there room for negotiation? One area where he conceded that there certainly was room for negotiation was on the gas tax. I don't know that he was necessarily hung up on the sales tax versus the excise tax. What about you? Do you see room for negotiation in terms of the bill that you presented? And then maybe on the flip side, what is non-negotiable for you?
Well, I there's only one man that's ever been infallible, and I'm not, and none of my senators are, and I doubt if you are. So with that,
I am not him.
So given that, when you close your mind off to other ideas, you're just really hurting yourself, and you get in your own precinct or whatever. I think that our plan was well thought out. I believe it is effective. And I have some issues, I think, particularly when you start going longer than 4 years on something. I was a little bit leery about even going that long. The President of the United States is going to have to balance a budget. He's already talking about Medicare cuts. If those happen, that's 77% that we're getting paid by somebody else, the federal government. Our budget that we collect taxes on is about $7.5 billion. Our budget's about $7 billion. We actually cut it this year. Our budget's about $7 billion. So we spend $20 billion or more, and the rest of that is federal dollars. Right. So if they do anything to balance the budget, and you watch, Richard, when they tried to do the first year-end bill, 38 Republicans refused to do that 1,700-page bill. They said it didn't balance the budget, and we were too far in debt. Now, that is the canary in the coal mine. The president had just gotten elected, and he wanted that particular bill, and the Republicans, or at least a big chunk of them that are in the House of Representatives, refused to do that. So there is going to have to be, and then, of course, Elon Musk is trying to get something right about all the crazy money they're spending up there, thank goodness. Every time we open the paper and look at what he's picked up again, it just makes you almost want to cry. But all of that's going on. Now, that may end up being less money for Mississippi. Our agriculture, and I've had this discussion with you before, our agriculture is in trouble. That is our number one industry. The banks aren't furnishing some of these farmers to farm like they have before. We've had 2 bad years, and it costs $12 for a bushel to be planted, and they're getting $10 for it.
Right.
You can't make up a $2 a bushel when they're making 90, say,
and
70,
just for the sake
bushels.
of clarity, we've had good crop years.
That's right.
The price years have not been good.
Our farmers are unbelievable. I mean, when you look at the yields that they're getting out here, they've land leveled their fields. They've put in all this center pivots, all of that. And I have met with, they have improved the land and the yield tremendously. But we can't do anything about Brazil. I mean, they do it cheaper than we do, and the Chinese are buying from them, and it's a worldwide market.
I know all of this is interconnected.
It is, because you want to be careful about going out further. And I'm just
But
warning
at some
you
point,
about
don't
this.
you have to stop being cautious and say, we're going to do this for Mississippi because it's the right thing for the taxpayers of Mississippi?
Well, let me ask you this. What were you doing 10 years ago?
I was talking about sports, not politics. I know that.
Yeah. You were in a different business. You were in a different business a year ago. So when you start going out 10 years on projections, they are projections, and they get weaker and weaker and weaker. Everybody from Davenport who runs this place to any other business out there will tell you the same thing. You can't project out 10 years where anything's going to be. So you have to be very, very, very concerned about doing that. And then we have obligations on PERS and other things like that. But
right.
we need to be cautiously frugal about this, and our projections need to work. We need to make sure we have contingency plans in there for any of these things that may happen into our state, from hurricanes to whatever, federal reimbursement matters. So when I did this, we did it for 4 years, and I think that's important. Now, we can claim we're going to do something out 10 years or whatever, I guess, if it makes you feel better, but I'll guarantee you it won't be accurate. It's not impossible.
You said you were going to meet with the speaker later today.
Yeah.
Should we just reach out and see if we can get him in the studio and we can do this in a very public forum?
I got a better. What time do you get off?
I'm done at 9.
Well, why don't you come on over there and sit with us? Hello?
No. I mean, if that's a genuine, I was thinking about what I've got to move around schedule-wise and get to Jackson because I'd love to be part of the conversation.
Look, you are welcome to come anytime. And because you end up short-sighting so many different variables, and I've listed several of them here for you just this morning, there's all kinds of moving parts to this.
There are.
There are hundreds of bills on the table. I think we've got about 250 over there, and they've got about the same over at our
Many
place.
of which have already been double referred on the House side. I want to ask you about that.
They did double refer. I want to speak to the speaker about that today. I didn't double refer, but about 46. I think he did like 160 of them.
We'll take a quick time out. We'll wrap things up with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann on the other side of this timeout. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. We are going to attempt to cram a lot in 6 minutes. Mr. Lieutenant Governor,
good.
I don't know if you know this or not, but sometimes your answers are a little long. Sometimes.
Well, I've got 500 mills down here and everything, and so I apologize for being long, but it's
No. There's a lot of layers to these questions.
It's very hard, and I want to tell you, when you talk about doing these things where it seems so straightforward to you and I, let's just meet together and get this. There are competing interests on everything. I think other than some kind of resolution to honor Jesus, I think the rest of anything else is probably going to have two sides to it and a bunch of lobbyists on both sides. So it's very hard for the speaker to manipulate 122 people and all the competing interests. He has his hands full, as do we.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as you'd like for it to be sometimes. But I will tell you, we are shrinking the size of government. There were 26,000 employees when I started 4 or 5 years ago. There are 24,000 now. We're paying off the state's debt. That's never been done before, Richard, ever, where we paid off hundreds of millions of dollars of state's debt, so that we'll be very fluid. If one of these calamities or the federal government cuts our money back, that kind of thing, we'll have money in the bank that we can deal with that. That's very important, not to mortgage your children's future. So there are a lot of good things. We're shrinking the number of employees. We're paying off the state's debt. There's good things going on in Mississippi. Our education has just gone home running. I mean, they've gone to 9th from 50th, and if we'd let Canada in, we'd have been 51st probably. So I'm really proud of our education. I met with Lance Evans yesterday for an hour to talk about this new program that they're going to do to educate children with math and English language and others remotely by educating teachers and using public broadcasting. So there are a lot of positive things happening in the state. So
there are.
And I'm real honored and real pleased with the progress we're making. We're in a great, unique spot, and we argue about one thing or another, but right now the state's in the best shape it's ever been in.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you on that point, but that doesn't mean that there's not more that can be done.
Absolutely.
The double referred bills on the House side, do you believe that's a ploy that has been put in place to try and push House Bill 1 through?
I don't know that. Speaker and I'll meet today about different ones. He has he has more committees than we do, and he has more people than we do. So he has more people he has to have to touch than I do. So that I don't consider that to be necessarily some kind of bell ringer for something else. I think it's just things he's got to do.
I want to try and get to two separate issues. I know we don't have time to do this justice. We're going to talk more about it tomorrow. PBMs, okay. Pharmacy benefit managers. Mm-hmm. I know you're hearing from independent pharmacy owners because I'm hearing from them, and I know they're reaching out to legislators as well.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Is there relief in sight for independent pharmacy owners in this kind of stranglehold that PBMs have on the medication side of the healthcare system?
Well, we passed our pharmacy benefit plan, and it was stronger, I think, than the House's plan. There are some concerns, I think, from our business community to make sure that they don't have additional cost. But clearly, we are unified in transparency and the fact that PBM should not be driving the cost as much as they are. And so that, I think both the House and the Senate are unified in that. We want to make sure that we don't cost our businesses more money. But I took one of my pharmacists brought me a year's worth of pharmacies, no names or anything, and I went through them with them, and they lose money on probably half the stuff they give you. because of this way, and it has got aggregated into three big groups, and we don't really know who's making how much money, other than it's costing way more than it does anywhere else in the world. So I think our bill was a good bill for a good start, and theirs was as well, and I'm hopeful that we'll come out with a decent pharmacy bill. The independent pharmacists are a part of the healthcare chain. And in many instances, they're the primary.
And a part of our communities also.
Absolutely.
They matter locally.
Yeah, when my mom had, when I talked to my pharmacist when she was in Vicksburg, and he'd say, your mom doesn't need to be taking both of these. They go in and they get a prescription, they get another prescription, and they basically were the gatekeeper for mother. So I have to admit I have a prejudice for them. I just consider them a major part of the healthcare team.
Yeah, that was the case with my grandmother as well, with the relationship
everybody's
she had
got
with her
that.
pharmacist.
100%. And they need to survive, and to survive, they can't have the rug pulled out for them on every drug.
Yeah, I just don't think we've got time to go down the school choice road today, other than to ask you, is there going to be a bill that emerges that allows for school choice, or is that going to die?
I don't know that yet. Right now, I can't tell you. I believe that we ought to manage mainly for the benefit of the child, and where you have capacity in another district and there's an F district, I don't think they ought to be able to hold their kids up. That you ought to be able to move between public schools if you have a bad problem or some specific educational thing that you may need. You got to be very careful that these other schools have capacity to take a child. You can't expect them to add on a whole new school for another district. That's not doable. So there may be some room there. I'm hopeful. We'll see.
Yeah, you and the Speaker are meeting today. This is, I guess, the beginning of those conversations. Tax reform being at the top of the list. Will there be a bill outside of having to go to a special session that is passed by both sides?
We'll see. That's why you send us down here.
Handicap it. Give me a percentage chance.
On whether we get bills or not, I couldn't even do that. I will tell you this: we'll have a budget, so I can tell you that for sure.
Well, I guess that's a start. Lieutenant Governor, thank you for your time. Really are glad that you're okay. I know that was scary a week or so ago. Always appreciate the time.
I appreciate so many well wishes coming from all over, and they're actually sending me some turbo water from Chandelier Island and going down in Gulfport, and I really appreciate that.
Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, thank you.